Welcome my dear students of class 9A and 9B to my history class. Today the same lesson which I had been teaching you, the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire, some points which were left now I am going to teach you. More points also are there. I shall keep on teaching this lesson for a few days more. First one, literary development. Second point, cultural development. Third point, religious tolerance. Fourth point, justice of the Mughals. And fifth point, development in the field of architecture. Development in the field of architecture. First point, literary development. You know, Babur, who established Mughal dynasty in India, was actually a man of worship. That very Babur could write book, his autobiography. Hardly it could be expected from him, but he proved it to be correct because of his originality, extra co-curricular activities. During his leisure, he kept on writing something, and many of his novels asked him, "Sir, sometimes we see you are writing something." They said to Babur, "Sometimes we see you are writing something. What are you writing, sir? Would you please tell me?" Babur laughed at them, but did not answer. But ultimately, it proved that what he was writing was nothing but his autobiography. And what is the name of his autobiography? The name of his autobiography is Tuzuk-i Babur. That is a famous autobiography of Babur, Tuzuk-i Baburi. It is a remarkable, piece of literature that reveals, the quality of the contemporary age. He revealed it by through his writings. That reveals a very sensitive and sensible side of the brilliant General Babur. It was probably this quality of his personality that gave him the competitive edge over his contemporaries. Babur was actually a fighter. He was a man of war. But Babur, despite being a man of war, he was totally indifferent. He was not indifferent in penmanship. He proved it that he was out and out a writer also. He wrote that famous autobiography of himself, named it Tuzuk-i Baburi. Akbar also was fond of literature, fond of literary and cultural, fond of literature, fond of poetry, fond of poems, fond of religious discussions. That's why he invited a number of, saints of different religions to discuss various issues, various religious matters, and he heard them, asked them questions. They also kept him answering. They also kept answering all the questions of Akbar. So Akbar's court, that's why it is said that Akbar's court was illuminated by many men of letters. Although Akbar was an uneducated one, he could not sign also. But his thirst for knowledge was compared to a sea. Most well known, among of them who embraced the court of Akbar was Akbar's biographer Abul Fazl. Abul Fazl not only wrote the details of the emperor's life, but also created a rich body of work on Sufism and its philosophy. Akbar's court was a court, as I mentioned earlier, was full of men of letters. They dedicated themselves in front of Akbar, tried to establish themselves to be skillful, talented persons, so that they could come closer to Akbar. It was Akbar's court that, a great number of Sanskrit works were translated into Persian language, so that the level of communication between the Hindus and the Muslims increased. Akbar thought it. This was when, Tulsidas composed the Ramayana and Surdas composed his epic on divine love, Sur Sagar. Akbar did not obstruct the way of writing. On the contrary, he encouraged them to write it. Akbar wanted to make an instance. Akbar wanted to give the Hindus and Muslims an open land to make friendship. That's why Akbar always extended his keen cooperation towards them. Due to his Sufi learnings, Akbar also encouraged music and dance. The Kathak form of dance evolved and was perfected during this period, while Tansen, who was the greatest court musician ever known, lived in Akbar's generous patronage. It is said that he could, with his voice, bring rain to a land of drought as he sang the Rag Malhar, or light up a darkened room with rendition of the Rag Deepak. So this was introduced by the famous musician who embraced the court of Akbar. Who was he? He was Tansen. Introduced Rag Malhar, introduced Rag Deepak, and became a famous personality, embraced the court of Akbar. He was Tansen. Jahangir showed great patronage to a number of writers such as Giyas Beg, Abul Haq Devli. He wrote his biography Tuzuki Jahangiri. Shah Jahan's eldest son Dara contributed tremendously to the literature of that very period. Shah Jahan's eldest son Dara was a man of great personality. He gained knowledge of different, historical events of the world, and wrote a number of poems, number of books, which also shows the literary development during the reign of the Mughals. He not only wrote, philosophical works such as Sajnat-ul-Alua, but also he undertook projects of translating the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishad into Persian language. Dara, the eldest son, Dara, the eldest son of Shah Jahan, wrote a number of proses, number of poems in Persian language, because he was very much skillful in Persian. That's why that idea came to his mind to translate Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads into Persian. However, all this changed with the reign of Aurangzeb. Why? Because Aurangzeb did not like it. Aurangzeb was not fond of literature, literary development, cultural developments. He antagonized it. He thought that patronizing artists, painters, architects, writers was nothing but wastage of money. That's why he did not want to spend a single amount of money for patronizing artists, patronizing writers, patronizing dancers, but decided to protect his kingdom from the attacks of the foreigners, foreign invaders, decided to strengthen his empire for dignifying his own policies, which were criticized by Indian rulers. And Indian rulers in course of time declared themselves independent without accepting the political supremacy of Aurangzeb. That's why Aurangzeb remained busy in controlling the regional kingdoms of India because of his wrong policy, because of his religious policy, in reimposing of jizya tax on the non-Muslims, made him undoubtedly an unpopular ruler of India. As a result, almost all people of India, they antagonized his reign, and almost all Indian rulers, they stopped paying revenues during his reign, during the last part of his rule. During the last half of his rule, he had to stay at Deccan 26 years of his life. And during that crisis period, he required huge amount of money. It was Bengal helped Aurangzeb to chase the growing influence of the Marathas, but he was unable to cross the growing influence of the Marathas and died broken heart. So, though the last Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar II was a poet of some repute and a patron to some of the best Urdu poets such as Zouk and Ghalib, the glory of the age of magnificence had passed. Once upon a time, the Mughals patronized Indian artists, Indian architects, dancers, writers. As a result, there came literary and cultural developments during their reign. The process was started from the reign of Babur, the founder ruler of the Mughal dynasty. Babur was a man of war, but still he wrote his autobiography, Tuzuk-i Baburi. and allowed other writers to write poems only because of the reason he belonged to the same status, and as a result the policy of Akbar gave an impetus to the process of growth and development in the field of literary and cultural upliftment. Babur's son Humayun did not have much time for the people of India, so that he could share his feelings and patronize them. He remained busy in protecting his kingdom. But his son Akbar proved it to be correct. That Akbar was a talented ruler. He proved it by adopting good policies, by encouraging the artists, writers, dancers, architects, singers, a number of singers, painters, writers, religious leaders. They all were satisfied with the rule of Akbar. Why? Because Akbar had great respect for those people who could show their talents and skills and would come closer to him. During the field of literature and literary development, cultural development, Akbar unanimously made himself a popular ruler of India. The court of Akbar, as I mentioned earlier, was a place embraced by distinguished people. Someone was good writer, someone was philosopher, someone was religious leader, someone was singer, someone was, autobiographer, someone was architect, someone was, dancer, painter. But out of them, Akbar selected a number of limited persons who embraced the court of Akbar. It was Abul Fazl, one of them. It was Tansen, the great musician, was one of them. Akbar made an arrangement to discuss various religious issues in presence of a number of saints of different religions. Akbar heard their views, asked them questions, and until he got himself satisfied, he kept on asking. And a number of distinguished religious saints, philosophers, critics, they also were present there. Sometimes one person failed to answer it, the another one raised hand and tried to explain that matter with copious examples in order to satisfy the needs and expectation of Akbar. And whenever Akbar satisfied with the answer of the question he asked for them, Akbar always gave them a reward. Suppose one person failed to answer, one person failed to satisfy Akbar, but another one also he failed to satisfy Akbar, but third one or fourth one or fifth one by one would try to satisfy Akbar by clarifying all the things, by giving a number of examples And as soon as Akbar would accept the answer to be satisfactory, Akbar gave him reward, and that very person would come closer to Akbar. For that reason, Akbar introduced, a system of discussion where saints of different religions would come, Dini Ilahi. Akbar gave equal importance to all religions. That's why he was able to be a great ruler of India, Akbar the Great. Up to this, my dear students, next day I shall discuss the remaining part of this lesson. Up to this. Thank you.